Happy Thursday, everybody. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you are watching. We're really excited. Really excited to be with you today. It's March 23rd, y'all. And we are really getting to the end of March here. We have one more week left in our Trailblazers Trendsetter and Trendsetting series. Today, we're going to talk about agriculture with Makela Elvy, and this conversation is going to be really uplifting. So please stay until the end. Do us a favor and share this message out. So wherever platform you're watching on, we do want to elevate these issues because they are very important to our communities, especially to our communities of color. So if whether you're a parent or a social worker or a agricultural specialist or whatever your respective profession is, we want you to share this message out. Would you do that for us? If you are watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. If you're watching us on Facebook or LinkedIn, don't forget to follow iRaise Inc. And please don't forget to follow me, Shaniqua E. Moore, on all platforms. And last but not least, we have ATL Rise podcast. Every Friday, we are releasing new episodes. Go ahead and subscribe to that so you will be the first to be notified whenever there are upcoming or new episodes. So we're really excited again to have you, Makela. Let's get started. Really excited to have you. Welcome to iRaise Fireside Chat. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine.
Awesome. Well, Makela and I was chatting just a few minutes before we went live, and I'm telling really excited about the fact that she's a woman of color and the agricultural industry and just changing the game for us on a community level. So I want to formally introduce Makela and then love to start to pick her brain on this topic because this is not my area of specialty. It is a passion, but not a specialty. So we got a specialist here, and I'm really excited to hear more from you. So Makela is currently an educator and a camp enthusiast. She is actually at Cornell University. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm working for Cornell Cooperative Extension. So I'm operating kind of out of the campus in Ithaca, but the region that I'm really serving is New York City, baby. And
Love it.
yeah.
I love it. It works in an extension, capacity through the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. She has 8 years of experience in curriculum development. She's also the co-founder of S. Moore Mellon LLC, which happens to be my first initial and last name, which is a consulting company that provides resources, historical context, and promotes connectivity centered around the BIPOC experience. Her current activities include at Cornell, Makela empowers community gardeners. I love this so much through research, educational resources, and technical assistance. She helps with both growing crops more effectively and efficiently in urban settings and enhances their community engagement. She's also a notable DEI JB consultant. Makela is committed to enhancing the user experience of summer leisure and professional development programs. And finally, Makela has been coordinating programs geared towards lessening summer learning loss with the environmental justice lens, advocacy, and natural interpretation. Hey, y'all, this is Makela.
That sounds like a lot when you read it all together. And I feel like over the course of my career, what I'm passionate about and what I do professionally has stayed very much intact. I like to do what I love, and I love what I do. And I want to say that when you were thinking about environmental literacy inside and outside of the classroom, it really is about that connection to nature. And the connection to nature can look a lot of different ways. It can look like growing bean sprouts, it can look like gardening at your school, but it can also look like going for a hike. It can look like playing in summer camp and getting a moment to really wonder at the cosmos, feel the grass and soil in your
Mm,
fingertips. And so those are the two different ways that I like to engage folks when it comes to learning a new skill, when it comes to gaining an appreciation for nature. And when I say skill, I mean like it might be farming. It might be also understanding, the process of how something grows. So today, as we go through this interview, I just kind of want to paint some broad strokes. And if folks have very specific questions for me, we can follow up after.
I was really picturing, and I love nature. In fact, many years ago, I want to say maybe 11 years ago, when I first got the vision to start this organization, I was connecting with nature. I was literally at the waterfront out and City Island in the Bronx, New York.
Yeah.
And I was just letting the sun just sort of like just set on my skin and listening to the breeze of the river and just taking it all in. And that's when I felt like there was a greater purpose in what I was doing. So I love so much how you described what that means and what that looks like. Because I think a lot of times, which is very interesting, I feel like, especially in the US and more so in northern eastern parts, New York, those sections, we tend to be very disconnected from our environment, from the world, from nature. And so I think these things are so important that we're talking about it, that we're elevating these messages. But just getting ahead of myself here because I'm excited. Tell us, how did this work begin, Makela? What inspired you? How'd you get into the industry?
Wow. I feel like that's a loaded question. I really have to attribute my wonderings and my curiosity about nature to two things. There are maybe two moments in my life that I can say really said, no, 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 we're doing this. We're doing this. And I have enough within me to be able to see it through. And so, really, the confidence boost, I would say the first came from the years of attending summer camp. That was like
Yes.
a gift that my mother gave me, the time to be a kid, the time to play, the time to explore,
Yes.
and the time to connect with nature in a way that wasn't really conscious, right? It was like I'm just having fun with my friends, but I'm out in the woods, and there's a healing, calming effect to that, because you know what I wasn't experiencing? Anxiety or stress. There was no like school.
Mhm.
It was really just a moment to be a kid. And I think that piece is something I looked for, right? So even just knowing to ask for like that peace and that space, and the quiet when you're in the city. I'm originally from the Bronx, and when you're in the city, there's a lot of hustle and bustle.
Oh
You see
yeah.
a lot of urban settings. So that I feel like was the first gift my parent gave to me. And then the second one I would say is when I was in high school. I
Mhm.
left high school early, graduated early. But what I did after, I didn't like leave. I
Right.
graduated early, and one of the first opportunities at a after school program that I was working and earning money from, like my first job, if you will, and I was like 15, was at the Point, which is a community center in the South
Yes.
Bronx.
Mhm.
And I was part of their action program, which stood for activists coming to inform our neighborhoods. But my specific areas, the campaigns that I were working on, were all related to nature. So I was working on the urban agriculture campaign, and now we're talking 15 years old. So I've been doing this a long
Okay,
time.
let's go.
And, and then the second one was around transforming and revisioning the Sheridan Expressway as waterfront access and park space. Uh, and
Yes.
there was a little bit of success with that, with getting the floating lady to the park that's in the back of Hunts Point. And so really thinking about that in a creative way and what a neighborhood really needs to be healthy, and thinking about it in that regard. And then the last was we were rehabbing a space with the Audubon in North Brother Island, which was a bird sanctuary. And so I learned a lot about invasive versus native plants. I also learned a lot about just restoration and conservation efforts. And one thing that I noticed, which was very interesting, was in that space, when you're thinking about conservation, restoration work, there it's very clear what you're trying to do. But when you're trying to imagine green space in a community that is void of it, it's almost like you really are thinking about like the unknown. I think because I had one experience seeing green spaces and seeing kind of like what creating a healthy habitat was like, made me take those ideas and apply it to the neighborhood, which is when I started to think a lot around what could happen with the Sheridan. How could, folks still get what they needed to get, but also think about what's important in connecting to nature, waterfront space, park space, home
Yes.
lifestyles, green space.
Yes.
Now, the Sheridan Expressway is there's a Bronx Foodway there, which is also very beautiful. It's kind of like a public space where folks can interact with agriculture in a very organic way. You can happen upon like edibles that you're walking through the park and you're just like, oh my goodness, I could eat that. Like that is food. And seeing that public access is something that I know I couldn't think of when I was a teen, but something that I loved being part of some of those initial meetings and seeing what it takes. And I took a lot of that passion for nature with me to college and just kept on going. And that's now I'm back in the city with my community, sharing a lot of that knowledge that I gained.
Wow. I'm just really inspired listening to you. I kind of want you to tell us what some of these terminologies that you've been saying mean, because I think as people of color, we hear it a lot, but we don't really know what it means. So break down for us, what is agriculture?
Mm.
What does conservation efforts, what is that? What does it look like?
Mm-hmm.
What is green space? For
Oh.
those listening and they may hear it all the time, but have no idea. So agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
conservation efforts, and green space.
Okay, that is, these are really good questions. So I'll kind of go in reverse. When I think about green space, I think about spaces that are or feel natural, where you can actually engage with plant life. So I'm thinking about grasses, viburnum shrubs, trees, right?
Awesome.
Those are green spaces where you're actually getting that um, the oxygen and having carbon dioxide removed from your environment. That's how I think about green spaces and thinking about all the healing aspects of nature you can access
Mm,
because you're literally in commute. You're right there. You're in the space. Um, and then going backwards, so I think the second one was conservation efforts, and that's preserving natural spaces. So there's a huge history, a very long history in the United States around conservation efforts, but also around land seizure and what it means to actually um, own or steward the land in a way
mm,
that we really did learn all of that knowledge from indigenous communities in this
right.
country, and who
Yeah.
had a very and still have a very unique way of engaging and stewarding the land that doesn't involve ownership in the way that we think about it now. And so like what is designated park space and who protects it and who occupies it and who uses it is what we think about when we think about conservation efforts, being a little bit mindful and hopefully more mindful in the future than we have in the past
Yeah.
about how we're interacting with those spaces. But conservation means like protecting it from development. We see a lot of trends around urbanization, around building. There's always more and more and more in this
More
country.
and more, never stops. Right.
And so conservation is saying, wait, there's an ecological value to having these spaces here.
Yes.
We can learn from nature, but also like we can heal with nature. And so being able to protect those spaces from development so that they can exist in their natural glory. And then the last term that you asked me to define is agriculture. And that one I think of very broadly. I'm in agriculture, but it makes you think about your relationship to food
Hmm.
in this country, right? So instead of giving kind of like a Merriam-Webster definition of agriculture, what I want to do is envision with me for a second all of the steps through how a food gets from seed to your plate, right? So the whole industry, the way that we grow food, the food that we choose to grow and our practices in growing, right, all falls under agriculture. But then so is the supply chain that falls under agriculture as well, and how the different steps of getting the raw product to either processing or straight to a grocery store are processed all around the food stream, the food system that I'm describing. I would consider agriculture, because if one cog is not working, the machine is falling. It's
Hmm.
there's something wrong. There's going to be a bottleneck somewhere. People are going to go hungry somewhere. People are going to have access or not based on your socioeconomic status. Does your neighborhood have a supermarket? Do they have farmers markets?
Mm.
Is it fast food restaurants everywhere? These are things that I think about critically every day in the neighborhoods that I support and what folks need to introduce into their diet. So it's a really complex food system that we have. And where I feel like agriculture falls is I feel like it is valued at each step in the food system. Um, because we have to be thinking about the way that we're growing, the crops that we're selecting, and the way that we're managing the natural spaces in order to feed the future generations. Populations are just going up. And so, how are we really being sustainable is what I think about when I think of agriculture. So, sorry to kind of skirt past that definition.
That was a really great definition. You're making it plain for the person that doesn't necessarily study it. I think it's great to know that because there is not a lot of awareness. We talked about in communities of color what these concepts mean and how they affect our everyday lives from our physical health or medical health. Many of us have underlying health conditions, whether it's diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all connected to the way that we eat, the way food is processed, even nature, our lack of connection with nature connected to our mental health, right? So even there are studies that talk about sun increases your level of happiness. That's your mental health. Some people will sit in their home all day, may not go outside a lot, or some kids, right? And that's why a lot of kids, I believe, may be dealing with things like depression and mental health issues because sometimes they sit in a dark in their rooms and they don't go outside and they don't see the sun and they don't engage with nature. So these are things in our communities that we don't talk enough about. We don't raise awareness. So I think it's important that you're breaking it down for the average person to really understand.
Definitely, the social impact is I think huge. It's really major. And so I know, especially working at Cornell, we get a lot into the science, right? We get a lot into
Yes.
the granular things, but tracking the social impact, I think, is super important. And this is how you can help community gardens, which is my role, really get
Yes.
community engagement, right? They have to feel a rationale. I feel like folks, in order to partake in an activity. And when I'm thinking about activity, you just said like, I want us to think a little bit about convenience and how convenient everything has become. We don't even got to cook anymore. You just pop it in the microwave.
That's it.
So
Or
what are
air
we
fryer.
exactly in the air fryer? So what are we not doing anymore? We're not getting those steps. We're
Mm,
not, like we're not moving. And I think that there are a lot of factors that contribute to a lot, like you mentioned, a lot of health, and it's definitely nutrition, but it's also habit forming. It's also like, are you where? How far is your grocery store? What's close to you?
right.
And that can really give or take or add to some of the issues that you raised.
Yeah. I love everything that you're saying. It really leads me into something we talked about earlier, and that was the way that our kids are learning in school.
Mm.
I think that we need to have, and I know you're a curriculum development specialist.
Mm-hmm.
How do we create or develop curriculum and connect with local farms to
Mm.
teach our kids this in schools? What would that look like for us, and how much of an impact will it have on habits and lifestyle and health?
A profound impact, because if kids that are younger are being exposed to some of these concepts and enjoying it and having fun, that it's not like the adultification of kids. It's not like, so in agriculture you have to do this, and the only way that we're exposing kids to it is labor, right? Like you pick the weed, but instead maybe planting the flowers and just appreciating things like that, or counting the bees and butterflies that you see, something that's a little bit more whimsical, that can get that interest in, and also learn the value of these different organisms in a garden or in an agricultural setting. I think that community gardens really, really would like to share their message out broadly and engage the youth, because the youth are really going to end up being those volunteers later on if they see a value or coming back to programming, right? Um,
Yes.
so when I'm thinking about curriculum, I'm thinking about all of those touch points where you can bring somebody in and make a valuable experience for them and sprinkle some little science knowledge in there as well.
Yes.
If I'm thinking about, so my role really with Cornell is to support growers, so farmers already or gardeners already, mostly adults I work with. But when I think about the value of a community garden that's being housed at a school, that school is now able to provide especially an underserved community, that builds a relationship between the school and the community.
Yes.
I can give an example. I was a part of establishing a community garden in uh, Briarwood, Queens,
Mhm.
um, and they have their food pantry out of their garden, and their garden stays
I
open.
love
So
it.
anybody that needs to get food and access food and harvest food when it's appropriate can. And so then the school becomes that farmers market. So not only is it a learning space
Yes.
for the students, but it actually is a resource in the community. And so I do think that school gardens can be valuable. I think they need to be managed properly. Um, but it is an amazing impact and an amazing opportunity for the school to build up that community engagement, to offer services to the community and things like that. For sure, for sure.
I love it, and that's one of the innovative solutions I think we're seeing that we can expand more of.
Mhm.
You mentioned is the community garden, planting community gardens, connecting with community-based organizations that
Mhm.
can work with schools to house those community gardens where food can be grown, planted, grown, and also sold or given away to families. That's a great way to fight food insecurity. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm also thinking about how do we also get this information out to parents? They may not have learned this information growing up. And I think a lot of it is culture, especially when you live in urban communities or you live in cities. Things like having a backyard may not be something you're privy to, or being or ever visiting a farm or growing up in farms. You know, these are experiences that may not be the average person that lives in an urban city or urban community. So how do we get this information out to parents and engage with family members that are not in the school?
That's a good question. And I think it can happen two ways. So the first that I'm thinking is a partnership with a community garden. So like schools can definitely take that initiative. And I think when parents love free things, and
Yeah.
parents love creative things for their kids to get involved with. And so even if it's like a project-based experiment where you're taking care of this plant and then y'all are going to a community garden to plant it or something like that. Um, I think that that's one way. But also, I think community gardens can be more interactive spaces. When you have community days, also set up something that's going to be, I don't know, Instagrammable, that's going to engage the next generation.
Right.
Or like I feel like in urban settings, it's a little hard to have like a hue pick because you would have to be growing a lot. And when I say you pick, I mean like if you think about the experience of going to like an apple orchard and being able to pick your own bag of apples, right? Like there's
Right.
not that many interactive opportunities, but there are some where it can be adjacent to like agriculture, not necessarily actually tending to plants, that can bring folks in. I work with a garden in the Bronx that does a really good job of doing like culturally relevant dance in the garden,
I
or
love
doing
that.
art workshops in the garden. And how are the parents introduced to the garden? Because their kid came and planted daffodil bulbs, or because
I
they had
love
to take care of a plant and they developed this partnership over time. So I think there are ways that gardens, which are all volunteer led, by the way. So
Yeah.
funding, first off, there's a lot of like steps that I think can happen here, like funding, accessibility, and resources. 100% gardeners just need more, 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 right? Because a lot of it is volunteer time. And if you could get compensated to do it, even better. So I think that thinking about community gardens and urban farms, creating a space that is interactive for folks to come visit and feel like they're visiting and being like, oh, I want to go back, and really appreciating that experience. But also the strategic partnerships with the schools, I think, are chef's kiss for supplementing in-class science education.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking about
Outdoor.
literacy. Exactly. I'm thinking about engaging in nature. We can think of community gardens and our parks as that nature in urban settings.
I love it. And yeah, and you just mentioned one of them, which is outdoor spaces. So learning outdoors, kids should not only be learning in a classroom, they
Mm-hmm.
need outdoor classroom experience. And I honestly first heard about outdoor classrooms when I worked for the state of New York as a state representative many years ago. And I can remember being a regulator to many large, well off preschools. And I mean, the experience they gave these kids, a lot of it was outdoors. But I remember seeing a lot of outdoor classrooms, beautiful spaces where kids were able to interact and learn about nature. And
Mm-hmm.
these kids were a lot more calm. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't yelling, they weren't falling out. And not that kids don't do that, because they do,
Mm-hmm.
does have an effect on your behavior, on your mood, on your habits. So I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a really great way, the intersectionality between this and even mental health, which we didn't get to talk
Okay.
about, but you use that word multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
healing effect of nature, and how even engaging with nature helps to reduce things like anxiety. If you can speak to that being the last thing, because then we'll have to wrap up. What is the healing effect of nature, and how does that help and support our mental health?
Ooh, such a loaded question. I think the healing effect of nature, first off, we have to choose nature. So we have to value nature. I think that's like the step towards it, right? And so as we talk about these touch points to younger generations, or even just deepening that for the healing purpose, we have to choose it. We have to be exposed to it. That's the first thing. But when I think about the healing, I think about sensory. I think about the smells that come from nature. We're taking our cues from nature, right? If you're so far in a park that all you're hearing is the birds and the nothing, you're gonna calm down because you're not like stressed out, right? Whereas if you're in a city and there's all these sounds and a lot of stimulation, then of course it's gonna pique your anxiety levels. So when I think about how we convene with nature, even on farms, right? If the only things that you're hearing are like animals living their lives, you can also take cues.
Ah,
You can
yeah.
take cues from them. They're going to be louder when they're hungry. They're going to be louder when they need to move. And what's that going
Mhm.
to remind you to do? Move yourself, eat yourself, feed your soul, feed all of that. I'm also thinking about the experiences when you get sensory gardens, and they double as pollinator gardens, and you have folks interacting with the smells and touching lamb's ear, smelling basil, simple things like that, because it stimulates you in a different way and doesn't overwhelm your system. I think about little taste tests that you do when you eat your plump tomato and you're like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I ate every tomato that I've ever eaten before, right? But little moments like that, I think, are healing because you
Yeah,
are stimulating your body in a way that is positive,
yeah,
not in a way that's overwhelming
love
and
that.
stressful.
I love that so much. And we have an answer and a solution here that we are underutilizing. And after this call, after our chat, I want to go in my backyard and just look at the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Just sit out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I love this so much. It's such a eye opener, and it's a reminder, it's a refresher. And I'll say, one of the gifts my mom gave to me too, Makela, is I also went to summer camp 4 years in a row, and I became a camp counselor in
Mm-hmm.
undergraduate school for about 3 years
Mm-hmm.
in a row. And I learned about things like nature, and fishing, and for the first time, in planting gardens, for the first time in camp and sleepaway camp. So I think even investing in these kind of programs, giving our kids an opportunity to get out of the city and to experience what it looks like to be in sleepaway camp and to learn these skills, is a great way to help them connect to nature and to choose nature.
Can I do a shameless plug here? I know that we're wrapping up, but I
Go
work
for
I
it.
work really closely with an organization called Camp Reimagine, and what they're really thinking about is camp and approaching it with an equity lens. And they're so thoughtful. And this year, they are launching their overnight camp.
Woo!
And so
Awesome.
I want to say that because the intentionality behind the program is there. They've done incredible things in the past, and you're right. We have to invest, and we have to push ourselves to get into those spaces. What I will say about Camp Reimagined is they have a day camp, but there's overnight camp is a shorter program. It's very affordable for parents to look into. And again, they're building this with equity in mind. So it is a safe space, probably safer than some other overnight camp spaces to dip your toe in the lake, right? In the water for the first time. And so shameless plug, I'm going to say reach out to me if you want to learn more about it. I can connect folks, anybody listening, but parents to really take advantage. Summer camp is that opportunity, is
Absolutely.
that opportunity to let kids be kids and also to let them learn to value nature, see
Yeah.
maybe even where their food comes from.
Yes. And there's no electronics from what I remember. And it's changed over the years, but there's no electronics. You can make a call to your mom if you need to go to like to the office or your parents, but and that also helps them too. So I
Mhm.
love that. And I do want to promote that camp information to our team, our parents as well. So if we could connect and we'll get the information out as well.
Yeah,
But can you give us the website to those that are watching? Uh, Camp
absolutely.
Reimagine. So if parents are interested in sleepaway camp for their kids, a safe one where equity is intentional in that camp, that'd be great to share that with parents.
Yes, I'm gonna give you the link. It's www.campreimagine.org. I'm gonna go ahead and also
Also,
pop it in the chat right here,
yeah.
so that it can be.
Campreimagine.org. So www.campreimagine.org, reimagined.org, everybody. And we'll put it in the chat as well. But we're wrapping up here. We're at time. It's right there on the screen. So again, these conversations are so important. We're both recipients of camp, right? And
Mhm.
Makela may have taken hers to a whole nother dimension, but she's refreshed minds and reminded me of things that I love and I care about, being nature and being connecting more and choosing it. So I really appreciate you, breath of fresh air, Makela, and all that you're doing for our communities to engage them, to inform them, to raise awareness, to make sure that we're educated because these are the things that matter to our health, to our mental health, and that we have to make sure that we're helping, empowering our parents, our families, and our children and our schools to get these resources in our hands and to make lifestyle changes that are going to help extend our lifespan.
Mhm.
So expand our lifespan. So I appreciate you, Makela. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being a trailblazer in this industry. Keep pushing and keep moving forward.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was awesome talking to you today. I'm glad that I could carve time out to do this and just talk about it. I know I said in broad strokes, I can get really nerdy and granular about it.
No,
Um, but
yeah, bring you back on.
as things are rolling on the screen, I do want to say, um, on social media, urbanag.nyc on Instagram is definitely if you're interested in starting your own, growing your own. And then there are other ways to connect with me around summer camp, whether that be if you're a parent and you're looking for summer camps for your youth. I can definitely make recommendations depending on your situation. If you are a summer camp professional that wants to connect with me, the website is www.blacc.work. And what I'm really doing in that space is I'm working to help combat the attrition rate of people of color in these industries, in the summer camp
Yes.
industry and outdoor leisure industry. The numbers are going up and the diversity is not there to match it.
Mm,
So really thinking about how
let's
you
fix
can
that.
retain talent in those industries because representation matters. And the more that we are, the more that youth will feel comfortable at camp, see, and the industry will shift. So thank you again for the opportunity to just talk a lot about what
Amazing.
I love and how I'm feeling and why I do the things I do.
I love this, Makela. Please follow Makela. Please reach out to her. She is passionate, but also an expert. She's trailblazing. She is setting the trend for our generation. Thank you again, Makela, so much for doing the work that you do and continue to move forward. And I want to see this work expand throughout the U.S., not just in New York.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hold you to that. No
Yeah.
pressure.
Well, thank you.
I love it. And thank you all for watching. We're a little over time, but we appreciate you just for staying with us until the end. Whether you're watching this live right now or you're watching later on, please elevate this message and amplify it by sharing it out. Comment and let us know how you felt. Let us know your thoughts. We're trying to cover various topics. So we're holistic here. We want to make sure you get the information because we care about you. We want to see you healthy. We want to see you well. We want to see you thriving. That's what these fireside chats are all about. So don't forget to subscribe and follow us, iRace Inc. on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Also, don't forget to follow me, Shaniqua E. Moore, on all platforms. Again, we appreciate you so much. We thank you. We love you. Happy Women's History Month. Happy Social Work Month. And tomorrow it'll be happy birthday for me. So those that want to wish me a happy birthday, feel free to do so. But again,
Birthday.
appreciate you. Thank you. We appreciate you all so much. And we'll see you soon. Thank you. Stay tuned.
All right.